What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports NFL Podcast. I'm Will Brinson. I'm your host, and I'm back, apparently. I guess I was gone. No, I'm just kidding. I was gone. It was great. I was on assignment, as they say in the radio business. Joining me today to do some draft trades, to make some mockeries of mocks and some mistakes with somebody else's personal property, with team property. John, Breech and Tyler Sullivan. What's up, fellas? How we doing?
What's going on?
Brinson, you're on vacation. Did you forget your sunscreen? If you're watching this on YouTube, Brinson is a different shade of color than he was when, and now he's like, wait, what? Now you're looking a little.
No, I think that I think it looks like probably on the video that I'm like more red than I am. I think my color is actually pretty good, and my nose a little burnt. Did forget to zinc oxide my nose the final couple of days. But I was saying this, so like we were scuba diving. So like it's kind of and where we were, in the Caribbean, like you've got to, or the Caribbean, whatever you would call it, you got to be careful because if you're scuba diving and you get burnt early in the week, it is really painful for the rest of the week because you got heavy straps on your shoulders and you're climbing in and out. A lot of rash guard, shorty, depending on what you're wearing. I don't have any photos of that. Don't worry. I mean, like, I think it'll settle in. I think my color's pretty good, and I'm pleased with my suntan. So no further questions at this time, Breech. I think I probably look more red than I actually am, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel like that's computer screen, but let's go with really sunburn because that's a little bit
really sunburn. Yeah,
the computer does not have it in its color palette to pick up Brinson's skin at this point. It's just guessing.
Well, but I always feel like the computer usually makes me look way more pale than I actually am when I'm on this thing. And I'm like, come on, man. Like, I don't like anyway. We'll point out, very exciting. I've never seen this before. We were, and I'll find it. I'll tweet out the video or do something with it when I find it. But on get down there. I think it was either Thursday or Friday. We went out. We usually do 2 dives in the morning, break for lunch, do an afternoon dive. Some people do short dives. We did a dive off the boat, and we did this dive called Preacher's Barge. We'd been down there for about, 35 minutes or so. We'd seen a bunch of 5 rays already, a bunch of really cool stuff, maybe even a turtle, like a loggerhead. It was a really great dive, having a great dive. And we come around, I'm coming up, and there's were 2 people who came in from Grand Cayman, and there's their first time diving. The first time diving off a boat, by the way. First time ever diving off a boat. It's like 8th dive ever. It's me and my dad, our buddy DT, and then Harvey, who's our captain there, was leading the dive. And we're coming up over this old coral head, and all of a sudden, this shark launches up into the air with a stingray in its mouth and is twisting violently. We're like, oh my God, that reef shark's killing the thing. He drops the stingray. She drops the stingray. So we discovered it was a female. Wasn't a reef shark. It was an 8-foot hammerhead. And this 8-foot hammerhead proceeds Breech is disappeared. He got so scared of sharks he left. This 8-foot hammerhead proceeds to circle inside of us, basically pushing us further away from the ray because it was trying to protect it. It was hunting and protecting its prey, and did this for 11 minutes. And I've never continuously peed myself for that long, Sully.
Yeah, see, that to me, I'm a beach guy. I'm not an ocean guy, if that makes any sense. I will go up to my waist. I have that irrational fear. I don't know. It's called something, but when you're in
it's
deep
called
water,
a fear of sharks.
Well, no. But that fear of when you're in deep water, you feel like something's just going to come out from the depths.
It's the unknown. Yeah.
Yes, that I can't handle it. It's crazy.
Well, so I'll say this too on another dive we did, and this I'm not a huge fan. I have a fear of heights, and one dive we did, you drop when you jump in the water, you go down 50 to 70 feet depending on how far you want to go down, and right when you drop in, you can see it's where the reef wall, and it drops down 70,000 feet, and it is pure blue out there. It's pure blue down there, and it's crazy because you're swimming up to the edge of this wall, and everything's it's not you're not super high, you're super low, and yet at the same time I'm absolutely objectively petrified that I'm gonna fall off and just go careening down to this dark blue, or as you point out, something's gonna come shooting up, I've got I have really good eyesight. I mean, not the humble brag or whatever, like eyesight, but I can you can see stuff swimming out there in the blue, like along, like you'll see the shape of a shark like swimming out, and it's pretty freaky, dude.
I will gladly keep the Coronas cool on the boat and watch you guys go do that. That's totally fine with me.
Breech, you dropped out.
I would hang out with Saul. Yeah, the Sharks. I had to drop out. I couldn't handle it. I can't be in fear this whole podcast.
We actually saw more sharks on this trip than I'd ever seen on a dive trip. I probably saw like a total. You see some nurse sharks, which are they can't really do anything to you. A couple of reef sharks. One obviously one very big, very effing scary hammerhead. I think like 10, 15 sharks or something like that. Saw a ton of rays, it was a really good trip. Anyway, let's get to the draft. Specifically, we're going to talk about trades today, and we start with the Minnesota Vikings because it is widely believed, and I'll be honest, like I'm unplugged for a week. And I follow follow the news, but I'm not locked into the rumors and the innuendo about what's going on. Has anything changed in the last week to indicate that Minnesota is not trading up for a quarterback? I think we all agree that the Vikings are trying to move by virtue of going to get Houston's first round pick this year. They have 11 and 23. They want to get up into the spot where they can take a quarterback. Anything changed on that front, Breech? You're the master of rumors and innuendo.
Look, I don't think it did, except the normal stuff. I think when you were gone, we had Jim Harbaugh out there just being P.T. Barnum saying, look, everyone come get the 5th overall pick. This is the number 1 pick for teams that don't want a quarterback. He's trying to drive up the cost of everything. And
everybody loves J.J. McCarthy. Yeah, I heard that part before I left.
Yeah. He's building up J.J. McCarthy, trying to get quarterbacks going in the top 4. So look, I think we all have similar proposals here, but since I'm trading up the smallest amount of spots, and since I just mentioned Jim Harbaugh, I have the Vikings trading up to 5th overall. And they give up the 11th pick. They give up the 23rd pick, and it's the QB premium. I feel like teams do trade up, have to pay more in a QB heavy draft. So maybe they have to give up something else, but I only have them giving up 11 and 23. And here's the reason why I only have them going up to 5. I just think that you cannot afford to give up that much compensation, because you guys will talk about what you have them giving up to get up to 3 or get up to 4. But when you start giving that much away for basically a lottery ticket, this is like when you go to the supermarket and you have the $2 scratch off or you have the $50 scratch off, and say they both have a 20% chance of hitting. Well, guess what? I'm buying the $2 scratch off. I'm the guy that I don't care if I can win less money. I like that I'm not gambling as much. Sure, the $50 scratch off can win $50 million. The $2 scratch off wins $2 million, but it's just safer. And you look at what quarterbacks have done over the past few drafts when we have all these top guys. I mean, even 2021, we had 3 quarterbacks in the top 3: Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance. That was a disaster. And it's not just that year. I mean, even last year, CJ Stroud right now is the only bona fide guy that you would want starting on your team right now. You go back 2020 with 3 QBs in the top 6. There's some success there, but that's rare. So I just wouldn't. I feel like if I'm the Vikings, I'm not overpaying, and I know they're desperate for a quarterback, but I would rather sign Ryan Tannehill than give up 2 first-round, 3 first-round picks than trade up to number 3 and use a lottery ticket.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I have them trading up to number 3 with New England is just kind of a thought experiment. Breech, we already talked about this. I don't think New England should trade out of that pick. I would roll the dice and try to select that quarterback. But you do bring up a good point that it is a crapshoot. Like, this is what 20% of the time these quarterbacks work out, and 80% of the time they turn into big flops. So if you're Minnesota, and in my trade, you're trading 11, 23, and a 2025 first round pick, like that's kind of the arsenal you need to do to get up to that spot. You are rolling the dice, not just for this draft, but for multiple drafts to come. You might be best served to just sit at 11 to see what falls there. Maybe you like Michael Penix Jr., and that's what you want to do, and you have other assets to continue to build that roster. I think Minnesota is, from a quarterback's perspective, with all these quarterbacks coming into the league, probably the best landing spot out of the bunch. You talk about great great tackles. You have Justin Jefferson. You have great secondary receiving options in TJ Hawkinson and Jordan Addison, a quarterback-minded head coach in Kevin O'Connell. It's a good landing spot. It's just a question of, are they willing to pay that premium to get up to this within this top 5?
Yeah, and I think what makes it interesting too is if you look at the Chargers at 5, Harbaugh. I mean, the Chargers. I think the Chargers more than any team up there. Like Arizona, you could make the case. All right, they trade back all the time. Sean Payton, and that's where I have them going. We'll talk about that in a second. But like Sean Payton has, widely talked about how Monty Ossenfort is, like basically controlling this draft because he's at 4. So you have the first 3 picks go likely quarterbacks, and then that's a real number 1 pick. But they could say, no, we want Marvin Harrison or Malik Neighbors, and not want to move out because you need to get that wide receiver for Kyler Murray. And then you have the Chargers who at 5. So like if you're the Vikings, you're talking to, presumably based on what we're doing here, the Patriots, the Cardinals, and the Chargers. I think the Chargers more so than the other 2 teams are going to be willing to take a lot less to move down because they have certain needs on their roster that they know that they can fill at like 11 and 23. Joe Alt at 5, great. Or Brock Bowers at 5, fine. But you could definitely get a really good offensive lineman at 11. Now, whether he's as good as Alt, TBD. But like, there's going to be a guy that Harbaugh likes to fill the offensive line was for the Chargers at 11. Maybe you take Bowers at 11, and then you take an offensive lineman at 23. Because it does seem like they're trying to sort of reinvent the offense and then figure out the defense next offseason. That seems like what the Chargers' plan is. And people are like, well, the Chargers are going to take a wide receiver at 5 because they traded Keenan Allen to cut Mike Williams. I wouldn't bank on that. I think Jim Harbaugh is going to say, all right, we got a former first-round pick in Quentin Johnson. I think I can get more out of him. We got a guy in Josh Palmer who could potentially develop into like a low-end 1, maybe like maybe not really. Like he could play the 1 role. Or, you can fashion some kind of offense out of this. Like Michael Crabtree was his number 1 in San Francisco, and he had Vernon Davis, right? So I think the idea that the Chargers are going to sit there and take a wide receiver is fool's gold. I think they want to take an offensive tackle, and moving down to 11 makes a ton of sense. So if I'm Minnesota and I'm trading up with LA, the problem is you kind of have to wait until you have to play chicken with maybe a team like the Giants or the Raiders at 13, the Broncos at 12, right? All these other teams that might be interested in getting a quarterback. The Titans at 7, I guess. It seems like they're locked in Levis, but you can't trade up. You can't package 11 and 23 now to move up with the Chargers because it's entirely possible that then you immediately get leapfrogged by the Giants who trade with Arizona, who would at that point be more than willing to trade down to 6 because they're going to get one of those 2 wide receivers at 6 when the Giants move up for a quarterback. At any rate, point being is I have them trading up with the Cardinals, and I think there's something here in the middle, Sully. You have them giving up a future first to trade up with the Patriots. So the Patriots are coming away with 11-23 and a 2025 first. I think when you look at the math, and I'm using Draft Tech here, which has that's a Jimmy Johnson trade model. I actually need to look at the Rich Hill model, but the Jimmy Johnson trade model even would be enough to give up 11, 23, and a future second from the Vikings to move up to 4. And I think at 4, you have to feel pretty freaking good that you're going to get, Sully. If you have to assume if you're Minnesota, 3 quarterbacks will be gone by the time you pick, assuming you go to 4 or 5. If you like JJ McCarthy that much, then I think that's a reasonable amount to give up. And I think going to 4, you feel safe about it.
Well, this is the question, right? Are they going up to select just any quarterback that falls to them?
Right.
Or are they in love with Drake May or Jaden Daniels, and they think that they're going to be there at 3? That's why I think it's interesting for them possibly to go to 3 with New England. If New England isn't in love with any of these quarterbacks and Minnesota is starved for a quarterback, has Josh McCown, who was coaching Drake May in high school, and they're like, this is our dude, we want him. All right, maybe you pay that capital. And you're talking about price. I do think it's a little bit different when we talk about quarterbacks. When it's, you're trading up to select a wide receiver, I think the price is a little bit different. Those trade charts are a little tricky because it doesn't take into context what position you're going after. And if it's quarterback, and these teams know that it's a quarterback, they're going to squeeze you a little bit more.
And the other part is if you trade for a quarterback, so presumably you're going to have a rookie starting quarterback for the upcoming season, which adds even more value to your first round pick for next year. You look at the Vikings, you're in a division with the Lions and the Packers. You're probably not going to win the division with a rookie quarterback unless they look like CJ Stroud. So now you presumably could have a top 10 pick for 2025 that you just handed away. And so when you're trying to build the roster, that's not what you're trying to do. You're not trying to give away these future picks. And that's my other issue with doing, if you're trading up to the top, the number one pick, and you're getting the guy you want, that's one thing. And as you just said, Tyler, if you're getting this guy that has a good relationship with somebody on your coaching staff and you are also confident in him and you think he can be your starter, then it also makes sense. But man, it goes just back to that crapshoot thing where you're getting a quarterback. And if he tanks his rookie year, now you kill that year and the next year because you're giving up future picks. So, man, if I'm the Vikings, unless the draft board falls exactly the way I want, I'm probably sitting put at 11.
Well, look at Carolina. I mean, Carolina just did that. They went up to trade to get Bryce Young, and now Chicago's sitting there with Caleb Williams.
Oddly enough, the only team outside of CJ Stroud last year where it's like you drafted for like a rookie in the top 10 or 15 and then don't have a high pick the next year is like Mac Jones and the Patriots somehow. It's like they went to the playoffs his rookie year, right? I mean, or didn't they go to the playoffs his rookie year?
Yeah, they were a wild card team, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just saying like you look at like the Bengals draft Joe Burrow first overall. Burrow tears his ACL his rookie year because he doesn't have any protection, and that as a result they get Jamar Chase. Like that's a big freaking piece. The Panthers are giving away the right to Caleb Williams. They could basically have 3 other first round picks if they hadn't traded up for Bryce Young. And it's just very.
I mean, you look at Jacksonville. They drafted Trevor Lawrence in 2021 and still got the number 1 overall pick. If they had trade to get up to number 1 to get Trevor Lawrence, that's obviously not what happened. And they had given away the 2022 first round pick, that would have been the number 1 overall pick. And as Sully just said, you look at the Panthers giving up their first round pick, and that's the number 1 overall pick. So that is the absolute risk that comes with that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think, even Kyler Murray had a bad record when he was first overall. Baker, the Browns were actually decent his when he was first overall, but I mean, Josh Allen, the Bills didn't make the playoffs, or maybe they were better, but they gave their future first for Stephon Diggs, right? In Minnesota ended up drafting Justin Jefferson with, but here we are back in Minnesota. Point being is giving up a future first is really dangerous. So I like the idea of sort of hitting that middle and finding Arizona. But I do agree if they want to go up to 3, I don't think the Patriots should move out of 3 for anything less than a future first included in the package.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, again, take the at bat. But if you're not sold, okay, then get the haul. It's kind of what's going to be interesting about this new regime with this new decision makers with Elliot Wolf. It's all right. You're technically not the GM yet. That's something that we haven't really talked about here with the Patriots. Like they haven't hired the GM. Is he going to make the safe move and just take a quarterback, or if he thinks, hey, let's get out of here, let's take the risk of it being, blowing up and we miss out on CJ Stroud, but we have all these assets. It's a really fascinating decision at 3.
I think I'd be pretty shocked if the Patriots didn't take a quarterback just because.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, no, just because it's even they haven't named the GM. Jonathan Kraft clearly has a lot of influence here. It's very obvious that they've moved on from Mac Jones because they traded him, but they want to. I don't think they want to spin their wheels trying to figure out who the next guy is going to be. I think they're we have a chance to really make a mark on the franchise post Belichick. And if you hit on the quarterback, it becomes very easy to do the same thing they did in the Apple documentary, which is basically point the finger at Bill for screwing it all up at the end because he didn't, figure out a way to get a Jaden Daniels or a JJ McCarthy or whoever they would take at 3. So that's just a thought process potentially there. All right. Any other thoughts on the Vikings before we take a break? Nope. Good. We've got more trades. Nobody's going to pick where they're supposed to be. We're going to move them all around. We'll do that next.
Out there are 2 colossal beings, both forces of nature in their own regard. But in here, as soon as the chute bursts open, the duality of man and beast begins to fade. This is the PBR on CBS Sports Network.
All right, we all think the Vikings are finagling their way up to get a quarterback, doing exactly what Philadelphia did a few years ago when they went up to get Carson Wentz, sort of jumping up incrementally. It's also possible. I guess it's not insane. They're all right, we're just gonna take another wide receiver and an offense, or I don't know. I guess you could do that. It would be a weird thing to do, but we know we do all feel that's pretty likely. However, there are a lot of deals that are not likely, but could be possible, or deals that we think should happen. Let's break them down. I'll start. I'm going to go with the Giants. Trade up from 6 to either 3 or 4 or I guess 5 technically, for a quarterback. And to me, this is, I don't know about you guys. I feel like I'm starting to get away. There's a couple draft cliches I'm starting to get away from. One is you got to trade back into the first to get that 5th-year option, which we say a lot and no one ever does. Like no one ever actually trades back into the first round to get a quarterback. They just sit in we're just going to, because the early second round picks are really valuable after teams have like a while to think about it. If a quarterback's not worth going in the first, then, maybe he slides a little bit. And the other one is, you never know when you're going to be this high up in the draft again. It's like, actually, it seems like the same teams are up here a lot. So maybe they should stop thinking like we won't be up here again, like the Giants. They're like, well, you never know you were here 4 years ago or 5 years ago when you got Daniel Jones. So there's a good chance you might be back here. And so like, you don't have to draft a quarterback, but I really like the idea of the Giants making a proactive or like preemptive strike, I guess. And we talk about all those deals with where the Vikings could go. The Giants making some kind of move up to 3, 4, or 5, where you say, all right, this is how we feel about the quarterback evaluation. We know we have Daniel Jones here for 1 year. That gives us a little cushion to let him play, maybe, I don't know, just let him play, maybe get some trade value. More than likely he's going to get cut though, of course. And then if your rookie's not ready to start, but if he is, you toss him in the fire and you let him go, and you can get ahead of the Vikings move and do it for a much lower cost, I think, than other teams might be willing to do. Although the Patriots, the Cardinals, and the Chargers Breech may want to just sit back and say, nah, we're going to see what Minnesota's offering before we make a move with New York.
Well, it really feels like the Giants are the wild card because you don't know what they're going to do. There is that chance they take the quarterback, as you just mentioned, and it is a lot easier to trade up to 4 or 3 when you're picking 6 overall than when you're picking 11th, 12th, or 13th, like the Vikings, Broncos, and Raiders. And so I think that is a fascinating scenario, Brinson, that you just mentioned with the Giants trading up. And there's no reason not to, because if you are in a quarterback heavy draft and you are picking 6th overall and you think there's a shot that you can get up to 3rd overall, because the Patriots might call Minnesota and be like, hey, look, we have an offer. This is what we want for you. And the Vikings just say, look, that's too much, man. That's too rich for our blood. Make a deal with someone else. So yeah, I think you're this high up in the draft. Why not swing for the fences? I don't think it would be that crazy. And I absolutely do think it would make some sense for the Giants.
Right. And it's important to know that you can get out of Daniel Jones after 2024 relatively easy. I think it's like a $20 million, you can get off the salary cap. It's something along those lines, very manageable. So you could have a situation where you don't have to start the kid right away if you feel like he needs a little bit more seasoning, or if you want to go for it. You're not really paying Daniel Jones too much anyways, or at least, long term, it's not going to burn you too much. I just think that, again, if you're one of these teams, let's just do 3 through 5, New England, Arizona, and the Chargers, I just don't know when you actually accept that move from the New York Giants, because you want to wait to get the best possible package. And we just talked about how potentially you could get 3 first-round picks from Minnesota. How much do you value those picks as opposed to, I don't know what it would take, maybe you throw in another second-round pick for 2025, with New York. Do you value getting Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors, specifically those guys, and then picking up an asset later on? That's the balancing act they'll have to do.
Yeah, and I think with Arizona too, if I'm Monty Austinfort, I'm not making a move. I'm probably waiting as long as possible to make a move, because I don't want to end up in a situation where I trade down to 6 with the Giants and then then you open yourself up to maybe somebody jumping up where the Chargers are and saying, we want Marvin Harrison Jr. If that's the guy you have your eye on. Now, if you think Neighbors and Harrison Jr. are 50-50, you can make that move with the Giants, or at least make it when you're on the clock. By the way, one sneaky thing here we should have mentioned with the Vikings. I think Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk floated this, and I don't know if there's any buzz about this, but remember the tampering thing last year with the Cardinals and the Eagles. It was announced right before the draft. They just traded picks. Everybody's like, what? The Kirk Cousins tampering thing. We talked about it on here. What if they make the Falcons and the Vikings flip picks? It's like 11, and what the Falcons are at 7?
They're at 8.
They're at 8. I mean, if I'm Atlanta and I think like the NFL wants to hammer us and if you're Atlanta, would you rather lose a second round pick or be forced to flip 8 and 11? Because I think the answer is 8 and 11.
I would flip 8 and 11. Yeah, that's fascinating.
But I mean, I think if you're like, look, are bad. Why don't you just tell Minnesota they can move up to 8 and we'll take 11? And all of a sudden, Minnesota would have like way more ammunition to move up. So like that, I think that's an interesting angle that needs to at least be considered when we talk about what might happen with that tampering situation. Because I just think Atlanta Breech would sign off on that in a heartbeat, and Minnesota probably would too.
Yeah, I think the one thing about the Florio theory is that it might be a little. I don't know. The NFL would throw out that kind of punishment, even with the Jonathan Gannon stuff from last year, which is pretty serious because you're talking about a head coach. Was he not focused on the Super Bowl? That was a big deal. But the Eagles and Cardinals swap third-round picks in that case. So to bump that up to first round, I think might be too big of a jump. But certainly a second-round pick could be, or maybe you bump a third-round pick up to a second-round pick. But I would be shocked. I mean, that would change the whole complexion of the draft if you have them switch picks. And I think something like that, you'd want to give the other teams even a little heads up. But I feel like something like that could happen, but maybe in round 2 or round 3. But yeah, I mean, it would be bonkers if they announced that the night before the draft that the Falcons and Vikings are switching first-round picks.
But like the issue here too is like because the Vikings original pick was 11, they still have 11, right? So like the 8 and 11, if you switch second-round picks, it wouldn't be that huge of a deal to move. Yeah, maybe that makes more sense. But I mean, yeah.
I mean, it does for the Vikings because you're much closer to the top, and that makes it much easier to get a quarterback.
No. I'm saying if you're Minnesota and the NFL is willing to switch first or second round picks with Atlanta, and the Falcons are like, yeah, that's fine. Just don't take away a second round pick from us. Then I mean, yeah, like you know what? You would much rather flip with Minnesota than forfeit any draft pick. I think. Like as long as it was like I would rather flip from 8 to 11 than forfeit a third round pick.
Yeah, and you look at what the Vikings have. They don't have a pick in the second or third round. So maybe you say, all right, we'll give you the Falcons' third round pick, 79th overall. And I'm sure the Vikings would be thrilled with that because they don't have a pick in that round. But who knows? Or 74th overall. The Falcons have a couple third round picks.
All right, Sully, you stomped on Breeches. You wandered into Breeches territory here. Yeah, you stomped on Breeches. Yeah, you stomped on Breeches' line with your first draft pick or draft trade that should happen.
I think that the Bengals should trade into the top 10 to get into this mix at wide receiver. And whether you do that via the 18th overall pick and then some other things, I think that that's the best way to go down. If you don't feel like you're going to keep T. Higgins, you have him on the franchise tag. If you feel like you're not going to be able to have a long-term decision on him or sign him to a long-term deal, we just saw Devonta Smith sign a massive deal with the Eagles. All those numbers are only going to go up. If you feel like you're not going to be able to do it, maybe you use him as part of a trade package to get up into the Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, Marvin Harrison Jr. might be a little bit steep, but if you get into that conversation, you have a wide receiver that can help replace him. He's on a rookie deal, and it just feels like that makes a little bit more sense financially, and it helps them not only in 2024, but this is a team that should be contending when they're healthy every single season Joe Burrow is healthy. So if to me, you can kind of get your books right by getting a young wide receiver that's still talented to pair with Jamar Chase and not have this kind of awkward 1-year thing with T. Higgins.
Breech, let me ask you this. If I told you that the Bengals traded the 18th overall pick and T. Higgins for the 4th overall pick and drafted Malik Neighbors in a year where the Super Bowl we played in the Superdome in New Orleans, and they had Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Malik Neighbors on their roster, would you do that?
Would the Cardinals do that? Would a team? I thought you were going to say to like 9th or 10th or 8th, but you went all the way up to 4th.
I mean, T. Higgins and 18th. I mean, like T. Higgins.
No, I agree. Yeah, if they can get up to 4th overall, just surrendering T. Higgins.
No, and the 18th pick.
And the 18th pick, right. So you just switch first round picks and then throw T. Higgins a deal. Yeah, I could see that. I would probably sign off on that. I will say 2 things though. One, I do like Tyler's thinking. I'm literally have a story coming out on Wednesday. We're doing 3 trade proposals for each team. Bengals trade proposal is trading into the top 10. I have them trading with the Bears. So the Bears drop from 9th to 18th. The Bengals go to 9th overall. And the Bears also get a 2nd round pick and a 4th round pick. And there's not. But anyway, the Bengals part of this was it makes sense for them to go into the top 10 because you could do the receiver thing that Tyler mentioned. You're probably going to get the 2nd best tackle in the draft behind Joe Alt. you could conceivably take the top corner in the draft if you want to do that, or you take Brock Bowers. So you give yourself the options of everywhere where you have a hole on your roster, you can get one of the absolute best players available instead of waiting to see what falls to you at 18. Now, the cold water being thrown on Sully's theory is that the Bengals have not traded up in a draft since 1995. So it's not something they historically, and again, it's the same front office, the same people running it. So it's not like,
and I mean, like, it makes sense because they're, we like to call them frugal or whatever. I mean,
you're not trying to spend more money.
Yeah, it's a more expensive draft pick in terms of the contract. You have to spend like draft capital. You have to like give away draft capital. You just see like Mike Brown being like, I don't want to pay for that. Let's just sit here.
Well, I think, but I think the part of it now, I don't think they're the frugality. I think the frugality is why they turned down the Saints in 1999 or 2000 when the Saints were offering all of their draft picks so they could move up and draft Ricky Williams.
Yeah.
And the Bengals said, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. The Saints offered all of their draft picks plus 2 future first-round picks, was just, you would be, if this happened nowadays, the Bengals would have just been ripped apart nonstop for the rest of time. And the Bengals said, no, we're going to stay at 3rd overall and draft Akili Smith, when it was like, you could have taken the Saints deal, traded back up to 3rd overall, and still had all these picks left. So it was just insane they didn't do it. But now I think the Bengals like having these later picks. I don't think they want to give up their 2nd and 3rd round picks because they've hit in some home runs. I mean, T. Higgins was the 2nd rounder. Joe Mixon, Jesse Bates. You just look at all these guys they found in the 2nd or 3rd round.
Wasn't Trey Hendrickson
No, they signed him in free agency, but
sorry.
Sam Hubbard is
sorry, that's what
I think that's what you're thinking of. So I mean, I do think it absolutely makes sense though.
All the Caucasian edge rushers look the same to me. But I mean, I think it makes sense. And to your point, Breech, you also have, but like, here's the problem too. One, like the Bengals, the other thing with the Bengals is like, you want to make that move up, but there's gonna be competition here, including a team that you have trading up into the top 10 for a wide receiver.
Right. I think I have the Bills trading into the top 10. I think they're going to be more desperate than the Bengals because they just trade away Stephon Diggs. At least if you're Cincinnati, you have T. Higgins for at least 1 season, even if that's it. And then obviously Jamar Chase. So, I mean, the Bengals obviously need to start looking to replace Higgins and start planning if he's not going to be there. But if you're the Bills, you have to plan right now. You need a guy this season. So I think they are going to be desperate. And the thing is, you can look to make a trade to go up a couple spots in the draft, but they're picking so far down that it's just, you're not going to have any great receivers fall to you at 28. You're probably not going to get them at 20. So you're going to have to make a huge move. So I have them making a trade with the Jets at 10th overall. Now, these teams are bitter rivals. I do not think they would actually want to trade. So I think the Jets would have to be, you would really have to placate them with a very generous offer. So I have the Bills sending, obviously, the first round pick from this year, first round pick from 2025, plus their 2nd round pick from 2024. And I think if you put the Bills at 10, that really opens up a spot where they get one of the top receivers, and that's what they need.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we talked about last week when the Diggs trade went down. It just feels like Buffalo didn't put themselves in a position to land on their feet, and now they might be forced to overpay to rectify that position. You let Gabe Davis go in free agency, and you knew the writing was on the wall with Stephon Diggs. I don't know if you knew it was going to come to a head this offseason, but clearly over the last few years, it felt like there was going to be some sort of a departure. It seemed like that relationship was fractured to a degree. And now you're sitting there with really nobody at the position you need to get into this high into the draft. And, we're talking about, you really don't want to package a bunch of these future firsts, especially to like a bitter in-state rival. But man, if you're Buffalo, you have Josh Allen, you have to contend. You have to be in this position. So yeah, if that means going up for Rome Odunze or whoever's still there at number 10, I think you have to do it.
Yeah, the one thing I would say about this is I wouldn't be shocked at all if Buffalo viewed, and look, don't get me wrong, they botched the Stephon Diggs situation. They signed him to a big contract extension. They're taking like the largest dead cap hit ever for a non-quarterback.
Yeah, I think for a wide receiver specifically.
Or a wide receiver specifically, yeah, like $30+ million. I mean, this is a botch job. You screwed it up. You thought Diggs was going to be there for a while. You thought you could placate him with money. Diggs, the same thing happened with Diggs, by the way, in Minnesota. And as good, you go back and think about it, it's like as good as Diggs was for Buffalo, and he definitely elevated Josh Allen's game to a new level, they could have just sat there and taken Justin Jefferson. And man, that would be pretty spicy if the Bills had Justin Jefferson. They don't. He's on the Vikings. I do think that I would be surprised if Buffalo moves up. And I also think maybe they view Dalton Kincaid as a true number one pass catching option in the same sort of mold as a Travis Kelce, where you can have the tight end as your number one option. He's a guy you can move. You don't have to be in line all the time because you have Dawson Knox there as well. And then you have like Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, Mac Hollins. Like they're sort of trying to they're trying to do basically what Kansas City did. And it can work when you have an elite quarterback. But it's dangerous. You're playing with fire. Wouldn't be surprised at all if they sat where they are and drafted a wide receiver as deep as this class is. But I don't hate the idea of going up and getting a stud like a Rome Odunze if he's there at 10. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, more fake draft trades next.
The UEFA Europa League quarterfinals on CBS Sports Network and streaming live on Paramount Plus.
All right. More fake trades. Breach. You have the Bears trading away. The Bears? Don't you have the Bears trading up? Back up?
I do not have the Bears trading away the number one overall pick, so don't worry about that, anyone.
You can't go up from one.
You cannot. But you can go up from number 9 overall, which is where their second pick falls. And what's funny is that there is a lot of debate about what they should do with their pick. I think that most people agree that it's either receiver or pass rush or getting an edge rusher. And look, I think that you look at where they are with receiver. You have DJ Moore. Yes, you'll have Keenan Allen under contract for one more year, but you have Keenan Allen under contract. So I think that you take whoever you like, whoever's the highest guy in your draft board out of those two positions. And I feel like if they jump the Falcons, they could get up to 7th overall and grab whoever they think is the best pass rusher. Because I think the Falcons are their biggest competition. I think Atlanta's probably going to take a pass rushing guy. We don't know who that's going to be, whether it's Jared Verse, whether it's Dallas Turner. And maybe the Titans don't want to trade because they have their eyes on Joe Alt or another offensive line. But I think if you're Tennessee, you have to at least consider it because you want to get as many picks as possible to fill as many holes as possible. And maybe if you pick up a 3rd-round pick by dropping down 2 spots, that would be a nice little touch, or 2nd-round pick or whatever it takes. But yeah, I like the Bears to go up 2 spots and take the best pass rusher in the draft.
Don't hate it. I think Chicago will be active. And why wouldn't you be? You got that number 1 overall pick. You need to either supplement the defense or give Caleb Williams some more help. I like the idea of getting like Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze, and you come out of this draft. Whether it ends up working out or not, like you come out of this draft with Caleb Williams, an elite number 1 wide receiver. And so now you have that number 1 who can sort of take a year to learn under Keenan Allen. But I don't know, man, you just got people like clamoring to give the Bears great grades and Brian Poles.
Well, and let me jump in real quick too, is that I feel like the Bears in this situation would be looking to emulate what the Texans did last year, where you get the quarterback, you get the star defensive player. And I think the Texans did end up drafting receiver in the 3rd or 4th round.
Yeah.
And that's what the Bears would look
Tank
to
Dell
do.
worked out all right.
Yeah. Tank Dell was awesome. So you look to do that so the Bears just copy Houston's draft plan from last year.
All right. So you got a NFC West team trading up for a quarterback.
That's right. I have the Seahawks trading up to number 10 with the New York Jets to draft Michael Penix Jr. Obviously, there's a relationship there with the Seahawks hiring Ryan Grubb as their OC, former offensive coordinator at Washington. So to me, I think Seattle is one of these sleeping teams to go after a quarterback. Yes, they have Geno Smith, but it's kind of like what we've been talking about with Daniel Jones in New York, where you can pretty much get out of it after next season. So it's not like they have an immediate need, but you can bring in a quarterback to play either behind Geno Smith or compete with him in training camp. And long-term financially, it doesn't really burn you too much. Specifically why I put them at 10 is because currently right now, and we expect this to change, obviously, when we're talking about Minnesota, but 11, 12, and 13 are all teams that are probably looking to draft a quarterback. So if you can leapfrog all of them, being Minnesota, Denver, and Las Vegas, to go after Michael Penix, that sets you up pretty nicely. Yeah, you might be reaching a little bit for Penix, but ultimately he's going to be gone if you just still sit there at 16.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. It feels like Penix is we feel like Penix is penciled into the first round at this point?
I don't think so, but again, don't underestimate QB needy teams. So if all of a sudden, JJ McCarthy's gone by pick 4 and, Minnesota's sitting there and they couldn't trade up, they might have to make that move at 11.
And Sully, do you think trading for Sam Howell will deter them from looking to trade up in the draft?
I don't think it should. Like, do we really think Sam Howell is the heir apparent to Geno Smith? Like, I wouldn't do that. The fact that even like Pittsburgh brought in Justin Fields after they got Russell Wilson, like you need to create competition. You need to create long-term, at least you give yourself a chance to have a long-term viable quarterback. And from what we've seen from Penix from a, talent-wise at Washington, if he lands with somebody who knows his skill set, turn him into one of the better quarterback prospects in the NFL or in the NFL draft, in Ryan Grubb, I think that's a nice landing spot for him on top of the wide receivers.
I could see John Schneider like loving Sam Howell though, and sort of like I'm stealing him, like we stole Geno, like we stole Russ for a while. Maybe this can really work out well, but it low cost, low risk, et cetera, et cetera. All right, my final fake trade. I have the Chargers trading down.
Ooh,
sexy, but like I just have this. It just feels like Brock Bowers is a Jim Harbaugh type of guy, like athletic, plays the tight end position, willing blocker, can move them all around, incredible in terms of yards after the catch. And like, I don't think Harbaugh is necessarily obsessed with getting this number 1 wide receiver in there. Again, they have Quentin Johnson. People giving up on Quentin Johnson is crazy to me. Like the guy is, he's a former first overall pick. He was great at TCU. He's going to need some more time to develop because he's sort of a one-trick pony, coming in college football. I think didn't Harbaugh play against him? Did he beat him in the playoffs? I can't remember. I know Jordan, they played. Anyway, the point being is like Harbaugh's seen these guys up close because he's been in the playoffs against, TCU was there. We had Georgia was there. And I think Bowers makes so much sense. I don't know if you can take him at 5 with all of the quarterback valuation out there where you're going to have somebody who's going to be willing to trade up. It just seems like this 5 is such a great spot to trade down. The Chargers might be willing to take a little bit less than a premium to move out of that spot. I just love the idea of them landing Brock Bowers, but not doing it at 5.
Do you think we keep going back to Minnesota, but again, they have the arsenal. Is 11 probably where you would go?
Bowers. Yeah. Like I think 11 and 23 and maybe a future second. I don't know. I feel like 11 and 23, you can come away with Brock Bowers and a good offensive lineman, and you feel like you have really set you people are not going to be in love with the Chargers because they gave away all the wide receivers, but you still have, again, Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnson Josh Palmer's a 3rd round pick, Quentin Johnson 1st round pick. Jim Harbaugh knows he can get the most out of his roster. He didn't do this. He's not an idiot. He knows he can get the most out of these wide receivers. So I just think they're going to try and supplement around Justin Herbert, run the ball a bunch, take some play action shots. This is what they've done for years in this offense with him and Greg Roman. And then, I think he believes if he gets an offensive lineman and one more pass catching weapon, he can be really good this year. Okay. All right.
Sure.
Guys who are falling in the potential fallers who are worth trading for. I mentioned the offensive lineman. I mean, Troy Fautanu checks out for sure as a guy that could, drift down the board a little bit and be drafted. Fashanu, if you're the Chargers. And then you have the quarterbacks, Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix. You have some wide receivers, specifically like Brian Thomas, excuse me, who I think, I don't know, I think he can go a little bit higher than maybe people think for. Anybody, a faller on this list that you think could be worth trading up for, guys?
Well, I think Brian Thomas Jr. would probably be, if Cincinnati stays at 18, Breech, I feel like that's in play.
Yeah. I mean, look, the Bengals are going to have the pick of the litter. And again, they're just one of those teams that everybody has a tough time predicting. Last 2 years, everyone thought they were going to take an offensive lineman. They went defensive in the first round. This year, everyone thinks they're going to take an offensive lineman, and they might. But, I mean, receiver, defensive tackle, I think, are wide open. And again, we mentioned the Bills as a team that might go after receiver. I think that Brian Thomas Jr., if he falls out of the top 15, then if you're the Bills, you're thinking, all right, that's within our range. We don't have to give up a ton like we would to get in the top 10. So maybe that's someone. And then obviously the quarterbacks with Michael Penix Jr. and Bo Nix, and we talked about this a little bit, is that getting back to the top of or the bottom of the first round so that you do get that 5th year on the deal is a big deal. You know, we saw Lamar Jackson get taken 32nd overall. We saw Paxton Lynch when he got drafted by the Broncos, not necessarily a big name, but someone who was taken at the bottom of the first round. Jordan Love taken at the bottom of the first round by the Packers, even though they traded up to get him. But you do see it where teams take guys after quarterbacks, specifically after the 25th overall pick. And I could see a team trading up to get maybe Knicks if he's still available there at the bottom of the first round, even if he's not projected to be a first rounder by most people.
I also think Baltimore's a team to look at 30 that possibly trades up. I mean, their offensive line is absolutely like ruined. So if all of a sudden there's a run on tackles, I could maybe see them trying to get into that mix with whatever, Tyler Guyton or any one of those tackles.
All right, let's talk 1% trades, aka trades that are very, very unlikely to happen. I like the idea of the Bears trading out of the first pick. People are like, what? Like you trade down to, I don't know. Maybe you love JJ McCarthy. You trade down to 3 for the Patriots. The Patriots come up and get Caleb Williams, and you get 3 future firsts to move down 2 spots or something like that. And you get Jaden Daniels or Drake May. So that's not going to happen. It's probably more like a 0% chance trade, 0.1% chance. But like, I like the idea of the Bears being like, nah, we got y'all. We were trading out of the first, giving up like if the Patriots offered you 4 future firsts to move from 3 to 1, how would you feel about that, Sully, if the Patriots offered that to the Bears?
I would not want them to do that because, again, it's such a crapshoot with the draft. It's tough. I want them to stay at 3 and make the pick and just take the at-bat. If you're telling me that they're taking the at-bat and also mortgaging the future, like, no, I can't have all of that. To me, that's just a little too risky for me, even though I think Caleb Williams is going to be a good quarterback and all of that. But boy, that just feels like a big roll of the dice to give up assets for a guy historically where these quarterback prospects are such hit and miss.
Sorry, Sully. The trade's going to happen. Brinson's 1% trade is going to happen.
Breech, what is yours? Do you have one?
You know what? I'm going to throw out the Bengals trading T. Higgins. I do not think it is going to happen, but I feel like it is a 1% chance where it's there in the back of your mind. He requested the trade, and we saw him say at his camp over the weekend that he anticipates playing in Cincinnati, but he doesn't know what that front office is doing right now, obviously, because he hasn't talked to them in a year, specifically dealing with his contract. And maybe they're calling around saying, ooh, what can we get for T. Higgins? So I don't think it's likely. And I'll just throw out, because this has been thrown out so many times on social media, a T. Higgins to the Vikings for Justin Jefferson. And the Bengals throw in I saw Brinson raising the eyebrows. That would blow up the draft. That would send shockwaves everywhere. And the thing is, as crazy as the trade sounds, look, we saw Justin Jefferson say last week doing the Cold as Balls cold tub show with Kevin Hart that he's jealous of the fact that Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow got to play with each other. Because remember, Justin Jefferson was a teammate with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase at LSU. He's kind of envious of their situation. And so just the wheels started spinning everywhere. Like, ooh, maybe Justin Jefferson wants to play for the Bengals. And then if you're the Vikings, you haven't been able to get this contract extension done. You get T. Higgins in this deal. So now you feel good about, because you have a receiver, not to replace Jefferson, but someone there.
You got to give up what? Like a
18th overall pick if you're the Bengals. So the Vikings would get T. Higgins, the 18th overall pick, and a 2025 second rounder.
And the Bengals get Justin Jefferson?
And the Bengals get Justin Jefferson.
I might do that in my mock draft for tomorrow.
I mean, well, it's coming out in my trade thing on Wednesday.
So don't do that. That's what you're saying. Is that the headline for your article?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
I'm just teasing the whole thing. The whole thing's being teased.
Well, no, but I was like legitimately like thinking like I might do this for my mock draft, but I'm not going to do it if you're going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
Trade T. Higgins somewhere else. Just make up a big T. Higgins trade.
The Arizona trade I just mentioned a minute ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of like Justin Jefferson is pretty spicy.
But the one
glad to know you've got monster clickbait coming Wednesday.
But with the Jefferson thing, I feel like it works for the Vikings. You're thrilled with that, the Vikings, because you can build the roster and you don't have to give Justin Jefferson $30 million a year. You give T. Higgins $25 million, which is substantial savings over 4 or 5 years. And really only on the Bengals end is where it gets rough, because you have to figure out how to get Jefferson and Jamar Chase under contract. But at least for 2024, you're saying we're going all in. We're going to play in this New Orleans Super Bowl with 3 former LSU guys who
won a title
Jamar Chase,
in the Superdome.
And exactly. And Justin Jefferson, who won the title, as Brinson just mentioned, in the Superdome.
What do you got, Sully, for a 1% trade?
This is probably like less than 1%, but still, I would absolutely love it if we have a quarterback sleeper team that is the New York Jets that trades up into the top 5 to bring in JJ McCarthy to be behind Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, they've gone super all in this offseason to bring in Mike Williams, Tyron Smith. They're really, using everything possible in terms of free agency and via trades to help the 2024 and to maximize the Aaron Rodgers era. But the dude's old and he's coming off an Achilles. You are sitting at number 10. You have all your future picks beyond 2024. It's not out of the realm of possibility if you take a forward-thinking approach to go into, let's just say J.J. McCarthy's still there at number 5. Minnesota can't get a deal done. You throw 10 in there along with whatever else you need to, and you have J.J. McCarthy behind Aaron Rodgers. Now, he'll throw a fit. I don't think he'll like it.
Worked out well for the Packers.
But it worked out for the Packers. So, the New York Jets have been such a quarterback-starved team for basically my entire life. The fact that you have Aaron Rodgers now, it actually almost affords you to draft and develop somebody. You don't have to throw him to the fire like you had to with Zach Wilson a few years ago.
Well, and I think too with that, you were saying, okay, ordinarily, as Breech pointed out earlier, when you were in the first round and you draft a quarterback, and a rookie quarterback, and he has to play, there's a good chance that future first you give up is going to be really high. If you have Aaron Rodgers, you believe you're all in for 2024, and you trade a 2025 first-round pick plus the 10th overall pick to be able to get a quarterback, you're saying, all right, Rodgers, like, Aaron, don't be mad. Just go be great. This is just some insurance. Go be great. And if this guy doesn't play at all in the field, that means we're probably giving up a low-end first-round pick next year, and that's a great deal if you're the Jets.
I feel like Aaron Rodgers would quit the team if the Jets drafted a quarterback, not just drafted a quarterback, but traded up to draft a quarterback. We saw how upset he got when they traded from 30 to 26. How irate do you think he would be if they go from 10 into the top 5?
Yeah, at least tell him about it before you do it. I mean, but he's not gonna be happy because he's like, why? Like, you could have drafted like a stud, Roma Dunze, and you got JJ McCarthy instead. Like, are you kidding me, guys? But maybe you piss him off so much that he puts together an MVP caliber season. All right. Let's talk about teams most likely to trade up and teams likely to trade down. Obviously, the Vikings are likely to trade up. We mentioned the Giants. Broncos and the Raiders. I think, don't you think those are the two other teams most likely to trade up, where Sean Payton sort of openly hinted at, the quarterback situation? They don't have it. Like, they're in such a weird spot there, Sully. It's hard to know, like, do you really want to make this push for a young quarterback in this draft with, the lack of picks you have and the lack of cap space? Like, you're almost better off just feel like taking your medicine on this Russell Wilson stuff.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It almost feels like they're a year too early to make any sort of move like this. You kind of have to just take your lumps, maybe take best player available. Hopefully, if you love Michael Penix or Bo Nix, they could be there for you. But ultimately, I don't know if you're in a position to take the assets that you do have to trade up, because again, we just keep mentioning it, but it's worth pointing out that, like, even if they draft a quarterback, they're not going to be that good next year. You play in a division with Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert, like, there's 4 losses right there, and maybe you split with the Raiders, but like, boy, I just don't think that first round pick next year that'll be pretty high. Like, actually, I would kind of want that. Maybe you would get your quarterback then and you bring in a wide receiver at that spot or something along those lines. I just don't know if, whether or not they do it or not. I just don't know if it'd be the best move for them.
All right. Teams that trade down, Breech. Pats, Cardinals, we talked about. Chargers, obviously. Giants and Dolphins. Float your boat at all?
I think if you look at – I don't hate the Dolphins trading down, because picking in the 20s is just the ultimate crapshoot, because you have no idea who is going to fall onto your plate. You don't know who on your draft board is left. So if it gets near you – say the 19th overall pick is turned in and you realize, man, our top 5 guys that we are looking at that we thought realistically would be at 21 are gone, then you think, all right, let's trade back. Let's get some more picks. And so I always think that's a smart strategy. I feel like the Eagles are always doing things like that. So I wouldn't hate a Dolphins trade. And then, we mentioned the big guys like the Patriots, Cardinals, Chargers possibly trading back. But what do you guys think about the Giants trading back? We talked about them trading up, but maybe trying to build the roster a little bit more with trading back from 6 overall.
I have no problem with that. I mean, like, you could say we need to get a quarterback again. Like, we won't be here, forever. It's like, again, you were here 5 years ago. Like, you've been here a few times. Like, you could definitely be back here. You don't want to be back there, but you definitely could. And if you trade back, you can you go back to the Bills and Josh Allen. I always think about this, and versus like the Jets and Sam Darnold, and how Buffalo built out the roster in a way that it prepared it for a quarterback to be dropped in. And more often than not, what you see with NFL teams is quarterbacks have success when everything is built around them and they're able to be dropped in, versus go draft a quarterback, hope he's in generational talent, and he figures it out with less stuff around him. Like Sam Darnold never had a chance with the Jets because they didn't have an offensive line. They didn't have weapons. He was just fighting for his life constantly. Whereas Josh Allen, you build up this offensive line, you plop him in there, and then you bring in Diggs to supplement it. And so I think, to me, if you're the Giants, like you got one more year with Daniel Jones. Ownership knows, I'm doing like Nick Costas talks about how he thinks like if this team, if they stink, they might move on from Brian Daboll. It's like ownership has to know they foisted that Daniel Jones contract on this staff. Sully, I think that they're, if Daniel Jones, like they're going to give a little leeway here with Daniel Jones in one more year.
Yeah, I think this is a good trade down team. You could talk about Minnesota. You could even Breach, like this could be the T. Higgins team too. Like you could trade T. Higgins to New York, give them that wide receiver, and you're still sitting there with number 18 if you're New York, along with other assets, whatever you need to do to get that deal done. Like that's a little spicy there too. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I think Miami's a definite trade down candidate. You got to remember, they don't have a 3rd round pick. They forfeited it in that tampering situation with Brady and Sean Payton. So I think that they only have 21. And then if I'm just quickly looking, I think they have 55. And that's it with between day 1 and day 2. If you trade down, you get a bunch of assets over the next couple of days of the draft. I think that would make a lot of sense.
All right. Finally, most likely team to draft a player from Georgia. Just kidding. It's the Eagles. It always is. That's what Howie Roseman does in the draft. Okay. That'll do it for us. Trade show in the books. Back tomorrow. Tuesdays with Brady, myself, Laser Drusable, and Brady Quinn, of course. And then we'll be back later this week. Draft is coming. Tons of content for Sully, for Breach. I'm Brinson. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys later.